think that this sent a clear signal not only to the Assad regime but to its main sponsors on the ground, i.e. the Russia and Iranian regimes, and that at the end of the day, the biggest success here is really not tactical, it's more strategic. It's going to give us tremendous leverage moving forward if we hope to have a hand in really trying to put an end to the civil war inside that country.
You know, Carl, something we have seen historically before any military action is taken, the White House will go to the United Nations, try to build a coalition and stuff like that, make sure we got a lot of people on board with whatever we're going to do before we fire the tomahawks like we see right there. But instead, President Trump said 48 hours after this poison gas attack in Syria, I'm going to do it by myself. I'm not going to the United Nations because I want the element of surprise, because you go to the UN, suddenly they tell the bad guys and things get moved.
100%. This is Obama's limp-wristed foreign policy is now over. I mean, if you want to destroy an airbase, you send 10 Tomahawk missiles. You want to send a message to the world that we are not here to play around. You said 59. That's exactly what Donald Trump did. I would be very curious to see how Pyongyang is reacting right now.
Ryan, what is your response? We just saw Peter Doocy talking to us about congressmen and women who were not in favor of this decision necessarily because the president didn't go to them first to get authorization and said that it is unlawful.
The president has to have the ability to rapidly respond to situations like this, and part of the criticism is based in the falsehood that this has no national security need behind it. And the reason it's a falsehood is because that air base in Syria has been linked to Hezbollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. It is a threat to the United States to have an air base with chemical weapons capabilities linked to Hezbollah, which has killed more Americans than anyone else up until 9/11 and is likely to kill Americans again.
So, Brian, clearly a strike targeted at a facility we believe was used for chemical bombing. Give us a look into the next 24 to 48 hours. How do we want this to progress? And maybe how will Syria and Russia try to react?
Well, I think we're going to be speaking very closely and quickly with Putin and other folks in the Russian government. We're going to be doing the same thing, probably through back channels into Tehran to try to make sure that they don't respond disproportionately. And I think that you're also probably going to see a second look at some other possible strike locations. I think that there are other targets on deck, and I think that you may see those depending on how some of those initial conversations go, specifically with the Russians.
Julian, what we're seeing with this president is something we didn't see with the last president, and that seems to be some flexibility. How on the campaign trail, Donald Trump did not sound like he was for any sort of military action in Syria. Now, 48 hours after he saw these gas attacks, he was for taking military action. This, because he is flexible, does that confuse people internationally when they're thinking about doing something bad?
Well, I think that it's never a good thing when you have people committing to one thing and then not following through. I think which is what happened previously with the Syria issue in the Obama administration. Here, it's sort of the reverse in the sense that we had a commander-in-chief who signaled he wasn't really interested in getting involved necessarily outside of fighting ISIS in this part of the world. And now, as commander-in-chief with access to a whole new treasure trove of information, he's making a different calculation. I think it's smart, and I think that it's showing adeptness. I would push back against the flip-flopper critics by saying, again, you have somebody who has really, his opinion on the matter and his insight into the matter has really taken he's had a steep learning curve over the last 2 months, and I think his thinking has evolved very quickly. I agree with what Secretary Tillerson yesterday afternoon, which is that every time you have an attack like this that goes unresponded to, it normalizes it. And it normalizes this kind of occurrence in the international community, and that's what's really dangerous to American interests long term.
Carl, you're a retired Navy SEAL, and these missiles were launched from destroyers by our Navy in the eastern Mediterranean Ocean overnight. What are you hearing from your friends in the military? Were they proud of the president for this? Is this a victory?
Yes, huge victory. Like all the people I've spoken to recently, active and former, have all said this was Donald Trump's first test, and he absolutely nailed it. I mean, this is right on par. And this is a show of force that the world needs to see, and the world now knows that we will do. And everybody in the military that I have spoken to is extremely proud to call him our president this morning.